Story 1. We were booked to go on a cruise around New Zealand back in December 2019. I was psyched for it. We were going to go on a day tour to a volcano. However, our car had a massive engine issue, and we decided to pull the plug because we couldn't afford to fix the car and go away. I'm sitting at work, feeling sorry for myself because I'm not on holiday, when reports start coming in. It was this. On December 9th, 2019, Wakari/White Island, an active stratovolcano island in New Zealand's northeastern Bay of Plenty region, explosively erupted. The island was a popular tourist destination, known for its volcanic activity, and 47 people were on the island at the time. 22 people died, either in the explosion or from injuries sustained, including 2 whose bodies were never found and were later declared dead. A further 25 people suffered injuries, with the majority needing intensive care for severe burns. It was horrific. The injuries were terrible. I just sat at work. I work for a news service, watching all the raw vision coming into the office, thinking about what might have been. If our car hadn't needed that work done, or we were better with our finances, we would have been on that tour. Story 2. I was traveling in Australia and stayed with this dude for a week or 2. At first, he was the coolest guy, but then I quickly realized he was a terrible alcoholic and a drug dealer who had recently been in prison. One night while I was out, he apparently got completely hammered and was causing a scene at the apartment complex, so the police were called. I show up and see cop cars everywhere. I had enough and just booked a flight for the next morning to see another city. I woke up in the morning and quickly threw my clothes into my bag. Was about to leave without even saying goodbye, but I thought that was pretty rude. So I grabbed a pen and started writing a little thank you note to the guy for letting me stay. While writing the note, he wakes up and comes into the common room. I do the whole, "Oh shoot, sorry I didn't want to wake you, but I found a cheap flight leaving right now." He responds, "Can I see your bag really quick before you leave? I think I left something in there." The dude actually took his stash of meth and put it into my bag when the police showed up the night before. I just didn't notice it in my rush to get packed and leave. I was literally about to board an airplane, and I would have sat there like a moron with the exact same excuse everyone else uses, saying, "It's not mine." I would have been locked up abroad if I hadn't decided to write that goodbye note. Story 3. When I moved back to New Orleans in 2004, I looked at 2 different apartments, A and B. I ended up choosing B because it was a little bit larger. I lived there for about 5 weeks, and the neighbors were horrendous and management wouldn't do anything about it, so I went back to the other place to see if apartment A was still available. It wasn't, but they had another one downstairs in the building next door. So I ended up moving again into apartment C. Apartment B flooded several feet in Hurricane Katrina. Apartment A had the roof ripped off. Apartment C, where I had lived for a year, was fine. I cannot overstate how difficult my life would have been if my apartment had been damaged. Not even taking into account my belongings, it was nearly impossible to find anywhere to live for years after Katrina. It's not an exaggeration to say that if my apartment had been damaged, the entire trajectory of my life probably would have changed. Story 4. Met a guy online. Had a great first meeting. Made out a little. He mentioned he knows a friend of mine. Asked her about him. She sends me his judicial page full of sexual assault convictions, including more than 1 statutory rape. Hey guys, just realized why some of you were so surprised after reading my comment. He did have convictions, but some of them were from cases that were dropped. Also, he had orders of protection against him from at least 3 women. Story 5. I was gonna go to get dinner at a local deli. Instead, a friend told me about a meteor shower, so we packed snacks and drove to the mountains to watch meteors. That deli was involved in a mass shooting that left 6 people dead, right during the time when I would have been there. Thanks, Tom, and thanks to the camelopardalis. Story 6. Had just finished a regular meeting I was the host of when one of my friends said, "Hey, you don't look good." I told him I didn't feel great and was gonna go home. He said, "Nah, I'm taking you to the doctor." We go to the clinic, the military, and after an extremely brief exam, he turns to my friend and says, "Take him to the emergency room and tell them it's his appendix." Less than an hour later, I was in surgery. The thing is, I had just come back from a dive weekend where I did 2 days of boat dives, for hours out in the Red Sea. Multiple dives were below 100 feet. If my appendix had decided to give out a day earlier, I probably would have died. Story 7. I was riding my motorcycle, not too fast. There was a nice spring breeze, so I had my visor open. Then I just randomly decided to close it. As soon as my visor clicked down, I saw a small but sturdy branch fall out of a tree, smacked right into my visor, and bounced off. Story 8. I was in a coma. It didn't look like I would come out of it. They had the talk with my wife about letting me go. She said no. Thanks, wife. Edit, this blew up. Attaching a video my wife made of the first year of my recovery. It starts about a week after I came out of the coma. It was a catastrophic stroke. For the video, please search on YouTube. Story 9. My husband accidentally took all my blood sugar medications, thinking they were Motrin when he had severe stomach pains. I didn't know what he was talking about, mentioning taking all the prescription Motrin, and rushed him to the emergency room when I figured out it was my blood sugar medications. It turned out to be acute pancreatitis, and he actually saved his organs and possibly his life by accidentally taking all those blood sugar medications. Story 10. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare cancer. The specialist told me he could offer no guarantees I would make it a year. Major surgery was performed to remove a large mass, and many further tests were conducted. Months later, I was told they actually got it wrong and I never had cancer. The specialist told me if he had made a list of 100 possible outcomes at the start of my treatment, my eventual diagnosis would have been at position 100. He had never seen anything like it. I felt like I had dodged a nuclear warhead the day I was told that. Story 11. On September 11th, I was living in Carroll Gardens at the time, a little bit south of the Brooklyn Bridge, and I was commuting via bike. Normally, I would wake up around 8 a.m., get my stuff together, and ride up Smith Street to go over the Brooklyn Bridge. I would buy a few dozen Krispy Kreme donuts from their location in the World Trade Center for my team and then ride down to Wall Street where I worked. That particular Tuesday, I overslept my alarm and had to take the subway in. I would have been at the World Trade Center right at the time of the first impact, but instead, I was on the subway. I actually was walking up out of the Wall Street subway stop right as the second plane was coming in and was able to see a little of the fireball and hear the citywide scream. Story 12. Our gas range in the kitchen malfunctioned. It was leaking natural gas all night. The carbon monoxide detector never went off. I woke up the following morning, walked downstairs, and smelled it. It was so thick of gas you could taste it. Quickly opened all of the doors and windows and vacated. We waited about an hour before going back in. It was windy out, so it cleared out quickly. Inspected everything, replaced the stove, and went on with the day. Nighttime came around, and I went to take a shower, but there wasn't any hot water. Turns out, for some unknown reason, the pilot light on the hot water tank was out and likely had been out all night. Had it not been out, my house would have been a crater, and I wouldn't be typing this. Story 13. I had leukemia when I was a kid. I was given a pretty low chance of survival. I got diagnosed the day after my 6th birthday and went into remission when I was 12. When I turned 14, they told me it wouldn't come back. But if it ever did, I would have the worst headache I've ever had in my life. I don't really understand the headache part. I joke that I pulled one over on the Make-A-Wish people. They sent me to Disneyland, but I didn't end up dying, so I kind of screwed them on that deal. Story 14. I was supposed to be in class in the building on the morning the shooter attacked Virginia Tech. My buddy in the next dorm and I had the same class and would often take turns attending. We both woke up that morning and agreed not to go. It turns out the sirens we had heard when we woke up to get ready for class were the police responding to the first victim in the neighboring dorm. We didn't think much of it because usually there's an ambulance or something early in the mornings after weekends since people drink too much or whatever. It wasn't until we were looking out our window across campus, seeing everything unfold, and then the windows lighting up with gunshots that we realized what was really going on. Then a bunch of fully equipped police officers came off the elevator with rifles, telling everyone to lock their doors and stay inside. Not exactly a fun time. Story 15. When I was 17, I was going out with a girl from school. We smoked a little bit of hash. She was a lifeguard at a swimming pool. Her boss was a creepy guy in his late 20s who had a thing for my girlfriend. He found out we were going to a party and told the police that I was some major drug dealer. He gave the address of the party. At the last minute, we decided not to go. We cooked dinner for her mom and stayed in and watched TV, smoked a joint in the garden. The party got raided, 2 vans full of police. All they got was a couple of underage drinkers. How did we know he was the snitch? He told one of the lifeguards who told someone who told my girlfriend. No, I wasn't a drug dealer, but full disclosure, my girlfriend was supplying me in this instance. Story 16, high school. I was hanging out with some buddies and some guys I knew drove up. Since they knew we played tennis, they offered to sell us some top-notch rackets at low prices. We were curious, so we went outside to look at what they had to offer. And indeed, the rackets were top-notch and so brand new they still had the security tags on them. We declined. It turned out they had robbed a sporting goods store and shot a couple of clerks in the process. Story 17. In high school, my friend knocked on my door and tried to get me to come out and hang out at night, but my mom refused to let me go out with them. I was mad about it until I learned that there were 4 other people hiding behind trees who were going to jump me that night. Story 18. Avoided a school shooting. The professor was kind of lazy since the lesson after the one we were having was right before Christmas. So he asked us if we were going to attend since some people skip the lessons before Christmas to go home if they have families outside of the city the university is in. Enough people raised their hands, so the professor canceled the lesson. So I and some other people managed to avoid the building that was later shot up. Sometime before we would normally have the lecture, we would likely be waiting in the library or in the hallways. Many people died. Story 19. She wrote my initials with an X-Acto knife in her leg to prove to me that she loves me and that I should be with her. Kind of funny to think about how she has explained these letters to her partners over the years. Story 20. A group of friends invited me to go see Dane Cook's stand-up special in upstate New York during Dane Cook's prime, 2008/2009. I declined as I didn't like Dane Cook and it was a far drive. I would have been the 4th member of the group that went up. On the long drive up to the show, the friend missed an exit northbound. In order to double back and correct his mistake, he decided to try to U-turn using the police median to get to the southbound side of the highway. Immediately upon starting the turn from the northbound middle lane, the car was struck by another car in the northbound fast lane, destroying the driver's side rear of my friend's car. The driver got knocked out on impact, and the now driverless car ended up crashing into the guardrail on the opposite side of the southbound highway. I'm told they barely missed an oncoming tractor trailer. Luckily, my other 2 friends, who were occupying the front and rear passenger seats, were away from the direct impact. Everyone was more or less okay, apart from short-term injuries, including the driver's concussion. The car was totaled. If I had gone, someone would have been sitting on the rear driver's side and probably would have been severely injured or dead. I credit my dislike of Dane Cook for saving someone's life that day. Story 21. Riding my motorcycle home after a tiring day at work. Summertime, sun shining, and feeling good. Riding in the left lane of a 2-lane road with a large median and only 2 cars, a van in front, and a smaller car on the right that I pass. Check my blind spot slowly, feeling safe, cool, and a bit lazy. Hear the car behind me honk as I change lanes and as I bring my focus back to the front. Where I should be looking, I see that the van had stopped in the middle of the lane. He had missed his turn, I guess. I passed the guy by inches and, luckily, because it happened so fast, I didn't make any corrections or panic or do anything stupid. It didn't register at the time how close I came to dying or being crippled. Maybe not until months later or not even, but I still think about it a lot. Story 22. I was in Reserve Officers Training Corps in college on a scholarship with hopes to become an Army officer. I was kicked out of the program my junior year of college because I failed 2 physical training tests in a row. I was kicked out on September 13th, 2001, 2 days after September 11th. Of course, I was absolutely gutted and had to figure out what to do next with my life. But all my friends in the program had multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and some of them didn't make it back. So in the end, things worked out for the best. The girl I was seeing wasn't interested in being an Army wife and is upfront about how she probably would have broken up after college. But instead, We've been married 18 years and have two awesome sons. Story 23. I was working in the basement of a 1920s building. We were digging a new footer. They had dug out the basement to make it into a full-sized floor. It was raining like crazy. We got tired early, and I left to go to my rock band's rehearsal space. The building collapsed 5 minutes after I left, and the biggest pile of bricks and rubble was in the exact place where I was standing.